Alright folks, we're live here in Taiji, Japan. As you can see, the hunting boats are lined up in formation and they've got a pod of dolphins. If you can see the little splashes that are coming up just a little bit in front of the middle of the formation, that's where the pod is. We first sighted this formation a little bit before 8 o'clock, about quarter till 8 a.m. It was quite far out to the south, but the boats have moved this pod in quite quickly. And as these boats are moving, we're also trying to get some zoomed in photos and footage. So please bear with us if we go quiet for a while every now and then. So these dolphin hunts that we're looking at right now, these hunts are primarily fueled by the demand from the captivity industry. Dolphins captured here are sold to aquariums and marine parks all over the world. And the sale of the live dolphins is ultimately what keeps these hunts profitable. Dolphins that are not chosen for captivity are subject to slaughter. And unfortunately, these hunts are permitted and completely legal here in this part of Japan. They are closely monitored by local authorities as well that prevent any sort of direct interference. Documenting and exposing these hunts continually is vital. There's still so many people all over the world that are unaware that dolphins are acquired from the wild for the captivity trade, and they're unaware of just how cruel that process is. So it's incredibly important that we continue to expose this, especially in real time, as it's happening live. Seems like the pod might have gone down for a little bit. Most of the boats appear to have stopped. There's a lot of black smoke that just came out of one of them. These boats chase and harass these dolphins so aggressively. And unfortunately, unfortunately, a little pod of dolphins stands no chance against a commercial fleet of dolphin hunting boats such as these. If you're watching on Instagram, where we have you guys on a landscape orientation today, so you might have to turn your phone sideways. Okay, some of the boats are taking off to the left there. This dolphin hunting season starts on or around September 1st each year and lasts until about March 1st. We're in February now, which is the last month of the hunting season. And typically January and February seem to be some of the months where they get the most dolphins. It seems that the offshore current that many dolphins follow comes closer to shore during this time. Dolphins are marine mammals. They're part of the group of animals known as cetaceans, which includes whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Dolphins are part of the toothed whale family. They're extremely intelligent creatures. They're highly sensitive. They're extremely social. They have very strong bonds with their family group or pod mates. They're wide-ranging and deep-diving animals. The encephalization quotient, or the brain to body mass ratio of dolphins, is second only to humans, which is it's closer to our encephalization quotient as humans than great apes such as gorillas and chimpanzees. So that's one marker that just shows how incredibly intelligent these animals are. Recent research has also shown evidence of spindle cells in dolphins' brains, dolphin and whale brains in certain species. This is significant because spindle cells are linked to emotion and empathy. This just is another factor that exhibits the emotional and intelligence, the emotional complexity, I should say, and the intelligence of these animals. Many of us can get quite emotional when we see footage of these drive hunts, but it's also extremely important to consider the factual and scientific basis that leads to the cruelty of these hunts. The cruelty that dolphins endure being chased and harassed by these large boats and then enduring a captive selection process or a slaughter in the Cove itself is extremely inhumane. It's like there's some smaller boats that have joined the formation. A little bit earlier, some of the larger boats broke off and headed back into the harbor. Some of the hunters that were on those may have switched to those smaller boats. So at this point, they're quite close to shore. They're heading towards the right, and over to the right is the mouth of the Taiji Harbor. They typically drive the dolphins in this way. They push them all the way to close to the seawall by the harbor entrance, and then use the seawall and the coastline as another barrier to kind of herd the dolphins in. And they'll push them over and over to the Cove, which is a ways to the left of your screens. It's to the left and behind of where we are right now. And they're moving more and more closer to the harbor here. At this point, we're still trying to get a good enough zoomed in photo to determine the species. It's a little bit hard at this time of the morning due to the harshness of the glare. They need to come at a certain angle to be able to clearly see the coloration. Move you guys a little bit higher. And the formation's going right into the sun glare. And folks, if you're watching on Facebook, don't forget to go to the Take Action link that's pinned in the comments. There's a list of things that you guys can do from anywhere you are in the world to help be a voice for these dolphins. And if you're watching on Instagram, please go to the link in our bio or go to dolphinproject.com and click on the red Take Action link. Now the boats are right exactly in the glare. We can just kind of see their silhouettes. Right, and for those of you that have just joined us, we're here in Taiji, Japan with a drive hunt in progress. It's just about 9 a.m. local time. We first sighted this formation several miles offshore to the south, just before 8 a.m. And they've moved very quickly to get to this point. And at this point, we're still trying to get a zoomed in photo that's clear enough to determine the species of this pod. And the only thing that's keeping these hunts profitable, and essentially the only thing that keeps these hunts going, is the money made from selling the live captured dolphins from these hunts to marine parks and aquariums. It's ultimately the money trail that leads to the captivity industry that keeps these hunts going. It's vital for us to continue to expose these hunts and the extreme cruelty that's involved, and help change the way the world sees dolphin captivity. And as these boats get closer, you'll be able to hear the banging sound that they create. The larger boats in this fleet are also called banger boats because of the metal poles that they carry on board. When they find a pod of dolphins, they'll put one of the poles underwater and hit the upper end of it with a metal mallet or hammer. And that creates a very loud sound underwater. Dolphins are very sensitive to sound. They're very acoustically sophisticated animals. And so this banging kind of disorients and scares them. And when all these boats line up and create a drive formation while creating that sound, it acts as if there's a wall, and forces the dolphins to move in the directions that the boats move. Dolphins are mammals just like we are. They need to come to the surface to breathe air. And the harder they swim and the more panicked they become, the faster their heart will beat, which causes them to need to breathe more. And unfortunately, that ultimately works to the hunter's advantage, because as they breathe more at the surface, the hunters will be able to keep sight of them and continue chasing after them. I'm going to kind of anticipate the way that the boats are going to move and adjust you guys here. All right, and as these boats continue to move, we're anticipating to move them over towards the left and come into a little better view here if they continue the path that they usually take. Many of you guys that have followed these hunts for a long time already oppose them and already oppose captivity, but please don't let it stop there. Social media and word of mouth are extremely powerful tools to help spread awareness and to help other people take action. Please share information and images and footage from these drive hunts with your friends and followers, and even your neighbors or family, or those that are in your community. It's up to people like us to continue spreading awareness and igniting chain reactions to spread the word to other people, and for those other people to also spread the word, and so on and so forth. As we mentioned earlier, it's ultimately the demand from the captivity industry that keeps these dolphin hunts profitable. As long as people are buying tickets to see dolphins in marine parks and aquariums, or to do swim with programs or trainer for a day programs, it's ultimately going to fuel the demand for wild captures, such as what takes place here. At this point, we're trying to get to clear enough photo to get a positive identification on this species. The boats have been in the glare for a while, which makes it more challenging to clearly see the dolphins and their size and pattern. There's a lot of approaching engine noise and banging from the larger boats. If you guys can see these smaller boats, or at least the silhouette of the smaller boats, the hunters on those boats also use the power of sound to harass and chase these dolphins. The hunters on those smaller boats have this tool. It's essentially a heavy metal object that's tied to a line, and they'll throw that object into the water, pull it back into the boat with the line, and then throw it, and then just kind of repeat that process over and over. And the sound of that object hitting the water and going into the water also creates a very loud sound. And that splash, combined with the banging of the larger boats, ultimately gives them the ability to chase and herd these dolphins. And folks, if we go quiet for a few moments at a time, we're trying to take some zoomed in photos and footage, so please bear with us. And the hunters on those smaller boats that are throwing the objects into the water, looks like they're throwing it directly at the pod. They're primarily using that object to create sound. As these dolphins are so acoustically sensitive, it's ultimately the sound that all these boats are making that allows them to herd them like this. We do have an idea of what the species is, but we don't want to announce it until we're 100% certain. Pod is kind of being super frantic and looking for a way to escape. They just turned in towards the cliff here, and now they've turned back towards the left. And at this point we can say that this is a pod of striped dolphins. I think both our Facebook and Instagram live streams can pretty clearly see the pod right now. They're huddled very tight together. They're looking for some direction to go. But unfortunately the boats are blocking their only paths to escape out towards the ocean and over towards the right. In closer to us is a cliff, and then over to the left is the cove. So they're just being forced in that direction. Alright, I'm going to zoom you guys out and go ahead and move. As they're moving quite quickly. So please bear with me as I relocate. Alright, so right now they're just outside of the cove. There's a skiff there trying to get the nets ready to trap them in here. The tarps have been drawn below us. Striped dolphins are all too often subjected to slaughter. The last time they drove them in, they did take some captives. And we did see them take captives in an earlier drive in January also. We're awaiting to see what the fate of this pod will be as they're being pushed closer and closer and nearly trapped in the cove. The pod is now coming in, it looks like. You guys can see up out towards the mouth of the cove is where they are right now. I'm just next to the skiff. And we're live on both Facebook and Instagram, and we'll try to keep both of our streams in the best view possible. The hunters are starting to draw the net there, trapping the dolphins in here. As we were relocating up to this viewpoint above the cove, we did get sight of the tarps drawn at the butcher house, or the building that these hunters use in the harbor. Typically when we see that, it means that they're intending to do a slaughter. At the last drive with striped dolphins that we saw, they did take captives as well. So we'll await to see what the fate of this pod is going to be. And folks, by documenting these hunts, we're ultimately making the world aware of what happens here. The only reason why these hunts are continuing to happen is because people are continuing to buy tickets to marine parks and aquariums. A live dolphin the live captured dolphins sold to marine parks and aquariums are ultimately what keeps these hunts profitable. If the demand for captive dolphins ends, then the need for these hunts ends. That's why it's so vital that we continue to expose this, and that you guys also continue to spread awareness and spread the word. Social media and word of mouth are extremely powerful tools to move other people to action. It's ultimately up to people like us to continue exposing this and to change the way the world sees dolphin captivity. This is a pod of striped dolphins that has just been netted in the Cove. And the pod is surfacing kind of under the branches over to the right-hand side. They're huddled very, very tightly together. Dolphins are incredibly social animals. They're incredibly intelligent. They have very strong bonds with their family group or pod members. And these smaller boats are getting ready to drive the dolphins closer to the tarps, it looks like. Now they're putting up that orange net to seal the dolphins even closer to the tarps. Progressing extremely quickly here. Typically the hunters are starting to favor putting the net in a way that it forces the dolphins over to the right, which is underneath the branches and underneath our view. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream here so that we can better document what happens. Please stay tuned as we will post a full summary of today's events a little later on. Thank you guys for joining us. Continue to spread awareness and spread the word. Social media and word of mouth are extremely powerful tools to move other people to action. It's ultimately up to people like us to continue exposing this and to change the way the world sees dolphin captivity. This is a pod of striped dolphins that has just been netted in the Cove. And the pod is surfacing kind of under the branches over to the right-hand side. They're huddled very, very tightly together. Dolphins are incredibly social animals. They're incredibly intelligent. They have very strong bonds with their family group or pod members. And these smaller boats are getting ready to drive the dolphins closer to the tarps, it looks like. Now they're putting up that orange net to seal the dolphins even closer to the tarps. This is progressing extremely quickly here. Typically the hunters are starting to favor putting the net in a way that it forces the dolphins over to the right, which is underneath the branches and underneath our view. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream here so that we can better document what happens. Please stay tuned as we will post a full summary of today's events a little later on. Thank you guys for joining us.